Call your legislators today and say, we're going to pass on that digital dollar thing, but thanks. I know what you're trying to do. Here's an article by Forbes, which should scare the hell out of you. It's why I saved it for last. This segment's regarding the bill and the fight about the bill. Folks, read this piece in the show notes by Jason Brett. New coronavirus stimulus bill in Congress creates a U.S. digital dollar. Big no. Hold on. Other side of the paper today. That's a big no. No. That's a big no, Ski.
Big no. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge no. Joe knows where I'm going with this because he's been with me from the beginning. But I discussed this about 3 years ago. Folks, Democrats love the idea, and some dopey Republicans too, don't know what they're talking about, love the idea of a digital dollar. Digital, meaning non-paper, exists in bits, zeros and ones. Why? Well, the digital dollar does two things for big government lovers. Gets rid of that nasty cash problem. I say that sarcastically. What do you mean, Dan? Nasty cash problem? Well, what does the government want to do, Joe? The government wants to do two things. They want to take your money.
Mm-hmm.
They want to spend it. Mm-hmm. But they want to do it, and they don't want to actually have to pay for it. So what better way to do it than to just take it from you? Now, I'll explain that the cash problem is an interesting one. The government wants to spend money into an abyss. They don't. And when I say government, I mean big government Democrats and some Republicans who play along. They don't care. They'd love to spend money forever in perpetuity. The way to get rid of that debt in real terms is to monetize it through inflation. Very simple to understand. We don't need to overly complicate. Mm-hmm. Monetizing the debt, people like to talk in fancy jargon. The reality is they want the dollar to be worth less in the future. Why? Because a dollar of the debt they accumulate is worth less too. Right? You take a mortgage on your house in 1960 that was $30,000. I think that's what my father and them paid for the house we had in Smithtown. It was probably $30,000 or less. The way to make that mortgage debt worth less is inflation. Inflation is great if you owe a lot of money because the dollar is worth less. If $1 in the 60s brought you, 3 gallons of milk, $1 now isn't even going to buy you a little cup of milk because the dollar is worth less. But so is a dollar of debt. If you owed $1 of debt in the 60s and you owe that same dollar of debt now, that dollar is far easier to accumulate and pay off the debt with now. That's a simple explanation for monetizing the debt. The government loves this. They love inflation. Big government hacks think inflation is great because they can run up huge tabs, effectively mortgaging the country, and they hope 30 or 40 years down the road when they have to pay it back that it's not worth a lot because they've inflated away the value of the currency. Isn't this great? Reminds me of the example in John Maynard Keynes, who is basically the golden calf of the left. But he did have an example in his book that makes sense. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two ways to tax the economy, right? Because the government doesn't make anything. The government just takes from you. So there are two ways to take. Inflation and taxation, right? The government, if the government wants to spend 25% of the economy, they have to take it no matter what. You can only take it two ways, inflation or taxation. Method number one would be to tax people at 25%. Simple as that. The United States citizenry makes $300 million worth of goods, tax them at 25%. You'll get 25% of the stuff. But there's another way to do it. Inflation. Destroy the dollar. So the government, let's say there's $100 in circulation. Just use round numbers for the sake of this example. The government doesn't have to tax anything. The government can print $25, spend it.
There it is.
Or actually, in this case, let's say $33, spend it. Now you have $133 in circulation. They didn't tax anybody, which is effectively roughly 25% of 133, right around that mark. And they don't have to tax anyone. Isn't inflation great? Of course not, only for idiots. Now, you may say to yourself, well, what does that have to do with the digital dollar? Well, ladies and gentlemen, The government is, and some big government Democrats, and again, I'm not holding Republicans out here. They've spent a lot of money too. Love the idea of taking interest rates. Lower interest rates will cause inflation because it's easier to get money out into the economy. Pushing interest rates low makes it easier to flush the economy full of money. So the government prints more money to drive the inflation rate down. So some genius over in, some big government genius, they've tried this in other places around the world, by the way, said, well, if we can drive the interest rate down by printing more money, the interest rate is basically a price on money, right? That's what an interest rate is. It's a price to go borrow money. If there's more money, the price is lower. Just like if there's more bagels, the bagels are cheaper. Fewer bagels, more expensive bagels. Fewer money, more expensive money. More money, less expensive money. They want to drive the interest rate through the ground. So some genius said, well, what if we could drive interest rates negative? Negative? So now I'm a saver. I keep my money in the bank. Interest rates are around zero, so I can't get anything for investing my money. So savers are, by the way, big government Democrats and Republicans hate savers. They can't stand savers because they love inflation. And to get inflation, you have to go and spend money. So some genius said, Joe, what if we drive the inflation rate negative? In other words, all those stupid savers who keep their money in the bank, it'll actually cost you money every day you keep your money in the bank. A negative, think about that. A positive interest rate, keep your money in the bank, gain interest, you got more money. Negative interest rate, keep your money in the bank, you lose money. Isn't this great? Well, what's the problem? Problem's obvious. They tried this in Japan and other places, or close to negative and negative at times.
I was going to mention it.
Yeah, because I know you like this story. And what
story,
became a booming business after that? The home safe business.
Yeah.
People went out and bought safes and took their money out of the bank. Because if the money's held in cash and not digitally, then the negative interest rates, they can't take your money. Matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, by pulling cash out of the financial system and putting it in your safe, you actually de facto make money while everyone else is losing it, keeping their money in the banks. The safe business was booming in Japan, which had the exact opposite effect than the dopey economists suggested. Remember, the goal of negative inflation, Joe, is to get people to say, holy crap, if I keep my money in the bank, we're going to lose money. Spend it quick. Put it in circulation. Not only did people not do that, they went out and bought safes, pulled their money out of circulation, stuck it in the safe, and didn't spend it because they were making more money by not spending it and let everybody else's money collapse. Oh, Joe, how do we solve that problem? Let's make a digital dollar. Therefore, we can wipe out the cash problem. And don't you worry, there will be no safes for cash because there'll be no cash. You'll be forced to keep your money in the bank. We got them now.
Oh, man.
Call your legislators today and say, we're going to pass on that digital dollar thing. But thanks. I know what you're trying to do.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud. And follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.